پیمانه اوست زان مرز شدم زان مرز شدم که دیوانه اوست شمعی به من آمد آتشی در من زد آن شب که آفتاب پروانه اوست بستیم کمر در خدمت دل رستیم ز خویش در کار خدا اسرار وجود گفتیم به خلق آیات و حجج کردیم ملا در عالم دل در حلقه عشق کو مرد طریق کو اهل وفا جز سلسله مویت صنما نگشوده کسی این مشکل ما شد زنده دلم بر بوی تو گل از نفخه صبح بر دست صبا
Good morning, everybody. My name is Marcel Monjan. I'm the technical expert for the Iranian Canadian Congress 2019 Annual General Meeting. Yeah, welcome to everybody. I'll give you some more explanations on using the Zoom system in a minute. But first, I want to introduce your chair who will open the meeting properly, Mr. Marvin Huberman. Marvin.
Thank you, Mr. Monjan. Welcome to the 2019 Annual General Meeting, the AGM of the Iranian Canadian Congress, the ICC, and thank you for joining us. My name is Marvin Huberman, and I am the court-appointed monitor in respect of the 2019 AGM and the 2019 election of the Iranian Canadian Congress. I'm also the chair of this meeting. I would like to introduce the panel. Bakram Jaliar, a volunteer member of the 2019 AGM committee. Dorna Mojami, a volunteer member of the 2019 AGM committee. Bakram and Dorna, I would like to sincerely thank you for contributing your time and talents and for taking on extra commitments during COVID-19. I very much appreciate and value your efforts in relation to the 2019 AGM and election. I want you to know that your hard work has been noticed. The next panel member is Marcel Monjan of Monjan Consulting, Inc., the court-appointed technical expert. I would like to thank Mr. Monjan for diligently fulfilling his court-appointed duties as the technical expert and for taking more than reasonable measures within the scope of his mandate relating to the ICC 2019 AGM and the 2019 election. I am very grateful for your high quality work and professionalism and for that of your assistant, Trish Monjan. We also have the following three panel members. Huyan Tabasinejad, a member of the current board of directors and the vice president of the Iranian Canadian Congress. Sude Gassemi, the president of the Iranian Canadian Congress, and David Shemtov, a chartered professional accountant and auditor. I now turn to the 2019 AGM agenda. The first agenda item is meeting call to order. The 2019 Annual General Meeting of the Iranian Canadian Congress, which is being held online via Zoom webinar today, being Sunday, December 13, 2020, at 12:05 p.m. Eastern Time, will come to order. I will now ask Mr. Mongeon to speak.
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to report that at present there are 350 attendees. I also notice that that number is growing by the minute, and we certainly will expect more members. However, certainly at the time we have in attendance at least 350 members of the Iranian Canadian Congress.
Okay. I'll turn now to agenda item number 2, establish quorum. Mr. Mongeon, the technical expert, having confirmed the number of ICC members in attendance at this 2019 AGM, as the court-appointed monitor, having full and final authority over the entire process and all matters relating to the 2019 AGM and 2019 election, which were ordered by the court to take place today, I declare that a quorum of ICC members is present at this 2019 AGM. I call upon Mr. Mongeon to discuss how this Zoom webinar will work.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm just, of course, getting some notes up in front of me. I want to thank all of the members of the ICC. A big thank you for attending today's meeting by Zoom. Since the pandemic, we've certainly been exploring different opportunities and ways to communicate with each other. The Zoom platform is an effective means for hundreds. We had actually 3,000 people sign up to attend today's meeting, but it is an effective means for people across Canada to be able to meet as we're doing right now today. Some of you may have already used the program. Others may not be very familiar with it, and that's what I'd like to go through right now. To all, though, I say welcome or salam chatori. By the way, that's all the Persian I know, so don't start typing in Farsi to me. We'll explain that in a minute. Although I can see the name you entered into the system, the list of attendees is private to myself and the other presenters today. Only if you ask questions will your name be used and available to other attendees. Technical difficulties can happen for many different reasons. In our experience, the most common technical difficulty that you're likely to encounter is your own wireless or internet connection. We are monitoring today's meeting through a number of different devices, so that if we in fact believe that there is a more generalized problem, what we'll do is we'll put a sign up on the screen for a technical hold, not unlike TV in the old days. Those using a computer can see the number of attendees in the top left corner of their window. It's currently just hovering at 400. Those on smartphones and tablets do not have this account because there is more limited space available on the smartphones and tablets. All people attending have been previously verified by me and only provided their link to access the meeting once I was satisfied that they were a regular member in good standing of the Iranian Canadian Congress. When there are more than 400 people on a meeting like this, it is not reasonable to have everyone speak. Therefore, we have decided that all interactions between you as attendees and the meeting will be in writing. Although you may have a chat button that you can see on your screen, it will remain deactivated throughout the meeting. Depending on your type of device, there are different ways to manipulate the screen and access some of the additional functions. The easiest is a desktop or laptop computer. In this case, when you move your cursor with the mouse, you will see some buttons that will be presented. They will include a Q&A button and possibly a raise hand button. I'll talk about the raise hand feature in a minute. On a tablet and smartphone, you have more limited screen space. I'm holding up a smartphone here to demonstrate. And because of the limited screen space, they actually hide the buttons. To get them to come up onto your screen, what you need to do is lightly touch the middle of the screen, and you'll see the buttons at the bottom of the screen. Once the buttons are displayed, you choose the one that you want and press it. Then you follow the instructions to accomplish your objective. At various stages of the meeting, we're going to ask people to agree to move or second a motion. At such times, the chair will ask me to engage the raise hand feature and ask who would like to make the motion in the form proposed. The first person who presses the raise hand button at this time will be the person I will recognize as making the motion. The same process will apply for seconding a motion. Let's all take a look at that function together right now. So right now, if you're looking at your buttons, you cannot see a raise hand feature. However, I've just, in fact, engaged it, and I see some people are already pressing that button. And you'll notice that one of the things that you can do is set it and unset it. So far, I've got about 13 or 14 people with their hands up. When the chair calls for someone to move a motion, I will allow the raise hand feature. I will, in fact, take the first name on my screen. Zoom's pretty good about putting them in the proper order. I'll call that out. And then at a certain point, I will lower everybody's hands and, in fact, invite people again to second the motion to raise their hand. The first person at the top of the list will be the person that, in fact, will be the person that recognized to second the motion. I'm going to, in fact, now discuss the next issue. I've just turned off the raise hand feature, so that button disappears from your screen. Another feature that we're going to use in this meeting is something called polling. When the chair declares that it is time to vote on a motion, in order to allow you to vote on that question, we will ask you the question on your screens and then allow you 30 seconds to vote on the question. In order to show you what will happen, we have a test question right now that we're going to show you. When you see the question, please enter your anonymous vote. Please engage the polling question for the test question. So you can choose one of your two choices on the screen. I have a countdown clock, and once 30 seconds have gone by, I will close the voting. And so I see that we have still about 13 seconds left. We'll let that count down and allow everybody to vote. I see currently we're up to 460 attendees in our meeting. We've now gone 30 seconds, and so we have the results. I will share the results with you, and we can in fact see that the vast proportion of people in fact clicked the yes button. And now I'm stopping the sharing of that screen. So that shows you how the polling will be done. The last major feature in Zoom that I want to demonstrate for you is the Q&A feature. Now at this point, I notice that there are already about a half dozen people that have been putting some different things into the Q&A feature. Attendees who wish to participate when the chair calls for comments or question will do so through the Q&A system. It's accessed by pressing the Q&A button and following the directions. I remind those using a smartphone, again, or a tablet, that you're going to have to touch once in the middle of your screen to access the appropriate buttons in your system. Again, just to save a lot of space, you have to touch once. You'll see the Q&A button about there. And now, one of the things that I ask people to do when you is to pose your questions in English or Farsi in a respectful and non-derogatory fashion. We will not allow any comments or questions to go forward that we do not believe meets this rule. If you're asking your question in Farsi, we will have it translated into English. It will be read out in both Farsi and English, and the answer will then be provided in English. When you make a comment or ask a question in Q&A, you may not do so anonymously. This function, even though you might see it, has been turned off. Once your question has been accepted by us, the comment or question will be duplicated to everyone if we decide that it has more general interest to everybody. And that will also show your name of having asked the question to everybody in attendance. There will be time limits for the questions and comments periods. I will ask for a last question within those time limits. If you do have a technical question during the meeting, please ask it in that Q&A system at any time. We will try to respond to you privately as quickly as possible. All answers that we provide in writing on a public basis will be made available to everyone in the meeting with your name, and will also form part of the record of this meeting today. I note that we are recording this meeting, and you can see that on many devices. In the top left corner, you'll see a little red dot with an REC or the full word recording. My final task is to remind those who have not yet voted that you have until 2 p.m. Eastern time today to vote in the election. That's another 1 hour and 45 minutes from now. The election began last Sunday, December 6th at midnight, and runs until 2 p.m. today. So far, we have had an over 93% turnout with fewer than about 200 people left to vote. I will be giving a more complete report of the election and its results after 2 p.m. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for this opportunity to explain the features of Zoom to everyone. I now turn the meeting back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Manjon. I turn now to agenda item number 3, notice of meeting. I declare that this 2019 annual general meeting is properly constituted for the conduct of business. Agenda item number 4 is the approval of the 2018 ICC Elections Committee Final Report, Election 2018, May 3, 2018. A link to this report was sent to ICC members and posted on the ICC website on November 18, 2020. Are there any questions, comments, or corrections to be noted? And I will call on Mr. Manjon to speak to this issue now.
I'm just reviewing the Q&As that we have received from people, and I don't have any questions. There is one question of general interest, Mr. Chair, that you might want to touch on, is why is it in fact called the AGM and election for 2019?
The answer to that question is that that's exactly what this AGM is. It is the ICC AGM for the year 2019. The last AGM that was conducted was 2018, and this one is for 2019. Of course, the timing of the meeting was delayed for various reasons, most primarily because of COVID-19. And so we have to get through the 2019 AGM before there'll be a 2020 AGM, which will follow upon this in the coming year. If there are any questions, comments, or corrections to be noted with respect to this agenda item, I will call on Puyan Tabasinajad to answer the questions posed and or to respond to the comments made, if any. And perhaps we'll give people some time now. Mr. Mongeon, you can tell people how much time they have to pose any question or make any comment or note any correction to be made to that report, failing which we'll move on.
So I do have a question from Farsan Rohani. Whatever happened to the minutes of the last AGM in April 2018? In that meeting, the president of the ICC at the time was chairing the AGM. At that meeting, several members of the ICC raised their hand to question the illegality of the AGM. The chair's response was always the same. So I'm not quite sure I understand the question there, because it starts devolving into some more derogatory comments, which I'm now going to, in fact, not consider. But the important question is what happened to the report of the last AGM? So perhaps Mr. Tabasinajad would like to respond to that.
So as far as I know, the elections report is the record that we kept of that AGM. So if everybody goes through it, you can see that it's pretty detailed in terms of what happens. Otherwise, I prepared my presentation for the elections reports, and this is it. But in terms of the minutes, you'll have to talk to the previous secretary, and I'm not sure what that situation is. But that's not an agenda item, correct? We're not approving the minutes of the previous election. Is that correct, Marvin?
That is correct. My understanding is that this report that is being addressed now, the agenda item number 4, that 2018 ICC Elections Committee final report, election 2018, May 3, 2018, is tantamount to the minutes of the last AGM of 2018. And that is what we have to work with from last year. So I hope that answers the question posed, and we'll deal with the report as it's being presented. And I'll reiterate the question that I asked, which is, do any of the members in attendance have any questions, comments, or corrections to be noted to that report, being this agenda item? And if so, I'm going to ask Mr. Tabasinajad to answer them or respond to them.
I have an additional question on this issue from Arsalan Kanamuyupur. The question is about the minutes of the meeting. There were lots of issues raised, which the president said were recorded. Where were they recorded, as there are no minutes?
I mean, I think the question was already answered by Mr. Haberman, that these are the minutes as far as we got them from the previous board, or from that meeting. So yeah, I'm not sure how we can answer that beyond it.
Okay. All right. Mr. Mongeon, are there any other questions, comments, or corrections noted with respect to this report, being the agenda item number 4?
Other than a question to Mr. Tabasinajad to speak clearly, loudly, and more articulated, I don't have anything at this time.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to accept the 2018 ICC Elections Committee final report, election 2018, dated May 3, 2018. Is there a mover? And now I will ask Mr. Mongeon to speak to explain the process at hand.
So I have just allowed the attendees to raise their hands. I have a mover for the meeting from Shoja Edin Zayan.
Okay, is there a seconder? And Mr. Mongeon, please explain what that means.
So I've just reset. I'm looking for a seconder. I now have a seconder from Madiyar Biadzi.
Okay, a motion has been made that the 2018 ICC Elections Committee Final Report, Election 2018, dated May 3, 2018, be accepted. This motion has been seconded. This motion is now open to discussion. Mr. Mongeon, please advise those present how they may participate in the discussion, if any.
If someone, in fact, has a comment, they can enter them through the Q&A system, and I will relay them to the meeting. I have one comment that indicates that the full video of the last AGM is available on the ICC YouTube channel.
Okay.
I have another comment from someone who indicates that they have not received the 2018 meeting note, and I point out that in fact there was a link just pushed out in the chat box. So if people click on their chat link, they're going to see a message where a link to the final report of the 2018 election is reported on as well.
I'll note that the original report was published on May 3rd, 2018, as you can see from the ICC website and the link that was sent out to everybody. So please note that as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mongeon, any further discussion in the Q&A?
I have a question for your consideration that suggests that without minutes of the meeting, the motion cannot be accepted. That was made by Arsalan Kenomiyupur.
Okay, thank you for that comment. What we do have is the final report, and that is what the motion relates to. And that's what this the 2019 AGM committee has been presented with for acceptance. And that's what is the subject of the motion here. So there being no further discussion, it has been moved and seconded that the 2018 ICC Elections Committee Final Report, Election 2018, dated May 3, 2018, be accepted. You will now see a poll pop up on your screen, and I would call on Mr. Mongeon to speak to this.
I'm going to ask for the pop-up to be engaged, please. So on people's screens, they have the motion wording, which it has been moved and seconded that the 2018 ICC Elections Committee Final Report be accepted. People are voting now, and there's another 15 seconds for people to recognize. I also want to add, some people are not seeing the pop-up, and that is as a result, if they are accessing Zoom only through the browser window, then they're not going to be able to see the polls. Polls are a feature that one must be using the Zoom application or program for. I'm now ending the polling. There having been 45 seconds for the polling. And in fact, the motion is carried as shown on the screen by a 55% to 45% margin. Have you received those statistics, Chair?
Yes, Mr. Mongeon. Let me just repeat the points. Those in favor of the motion, please click yes on the pop-up poll. Those opposed to the motion, please click no on the pop-up poll. Please vote on the motion now if you haven't already. Mr. Mongeon? What is the result of the vote on this motion?
The result is 176 votes in favor and 145 votes against for a 55% majority on the question.
Thank you. The motion is carried. The 2018 ICC Elections Committee Final Report, Election 2018, dated May 3, 2018, is accepted. I now turn to agenda item number 5, President's Report AGM, December 13, 2020. A link to this report was sent to ICC members and posted on the ICC website on November 18, 2020. We will now hear the President's report, and I call upon Sudik, the Iranian Canadian Congress, to present her report.
Hello, everyone. My name is Suri Hassemi, and I am the president of... Sorry, I'm just hearing some background music.
Yeah, let's, just a moment, please. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. My name is Suri Hassemi, and I am the president of the Iranian Canadian Congress. Today, I'll be taking you through some of the achievements and efforts of the ICC in the past 2 years. For more details, you may consult the President report that was sent to all members earlier this year and which is available on the ICC website. I'll begin by talking about the surveys and consultations that the ICC undertook in the past 2 years. As you know, the ICC has always attempted to root its campaigns and decisions in accordance with the views and beliefs of the community. This is why the ICC has a long tradition of consultation and surveys, a tradition I tried to continue during my tenure. In the period of 2019-2020, the ICC completed 2 major consultations. In January 2019, in preparation for the 2019 federal election, the ICC conducted an online survey in which Iranian Canadian respondents asked the federal government the following things. Number 1, reestablish relations between Iran and Canada. Number 2, ease immigration rules, especially for international students. Number 3, address climate change. And number 4, address anti-Iranian discrimination. In August of 2020, the ICC conducted another survey, this time about the impact of COVID-19. The impact of COVID-19 on Iranian Canadians and their expectations from the ICC in this regard. In this survey, Iranian Canadian respondents, as follows, indicated that their biggest concern during COVID were financial in nature, are following COVID social distancing guidelines, desire financial advice as well as psychological consulting services, are concerned about the pandemic in Iran under sanctions. Unfortunately, due to the workload of the legal case that has been ongoing over the past 2 years, the current board was not able to conduct more frequent consultations. The ICC should continue consultations and update its priority on a regular basis in the coming year, in my view. Now I will speak about the priorities that the ICC has taken as a result of these consultations. The first priority that I will speak about is that of supporting recent Iranian Canadian immigrants. As many here know, Canada's immigration system can be difficult for any immigrant. However, it is often even more difficult for Iranian Canadians because of our country of origin. These issues have only increased in years since the Donald Trump election. Perhaps the most important issue in the past 4 years for Iranian Canadian immigrants is the delays faced by Iranian Canadians with student and work visas. As many of you know, beginning in late 2017, Iranian Canadians with student and work visas reported they were experiencing wait times of nearly 3 years on average to receive their permanent residency, far longer than immigrants from other nations. Beginning in the spring 2018, the ICC was in contact with Canadian officials on multiple occasions about this issue, meeting with immigration officials in Ottawa and presenting before Parliament on this issue, as a result of which we received a reply from the immigration minister that wait time had been reduced by more than 1 year and that 4,000 individuals had received their PR status. In February of 2019, the ICC once again advocated on behalf of PR applicants. This time in Quebec by forcefully speaking against Bill 9, which would purge 20,000 PR applications, including those of many Iranian Canadians. Lastly, in December 2019, the ICC wrote to more than 50 Canadian university officers, asking them to grant extensions to Iran-based applications who did not have internet access due to protests at that time. Many of these universities replied that they did extend their deadlines for Iranian applicants after this request. The second priority that the ICC worked on in the past 2 years is combating discrimination against members of the Iranian Canadian community. On this file, the ICC vigilantly opposed discrimination, including the following example: condemning the attack on Saya Sky, opposing the exclusive presence of underrepresented voices in the CBC, demanding Canadian officials defend Iranian Canadians who were being discriminated against at the US-Canada border, condemning a racist petition by rebel media head Ezra Levant that called for the expulsion of Iranian Canadian international students from Canada, and asking successfully that Amazon remove a hateful anti-Iranian product from their platform. The next priority that I will be discussing in the efforts of the Iranian Canadian Congress in increasing the political participation of the Iranian Canadians. This is an important priority for this board as well as previous boards. As a politically influential Iranian Canadian community, this is a goal that every member of our community shares. The federal election offered the first opportunity to pursue this goal. Here, the ICC launched the election center where Iranian Canadians could access information on how, where, and why to vote, including information on where the major federal parties stand on issues important to the Iranian Canadian community. We also held a community roundtable where Iranian Canadians spoke about their views on who to vote for and why. Likewise, the ICC held a meet and greet for Iranian Canadians for the 2018 municipal election in Toronto. The next topic that the ICC was active on was Iran-Canada relations and the resumption of diplomacy and the preservations of peace, a priority that has been consistently at the top of Iranian Canadians' priority in the ICC community consultations since 2016. These included 3 major advocacy campaigns. Number 1, No Sanction, No War campaign, which asked the Canadian MPs to demand that Canada stands against sanctions and war on the world stage. Number 2, the Thank You Justin Trudeau for Standing Up for Peace campaign, where we praise Canadian officials for their role in reducing tensions in the aftermath of the Trump administration's actions in early 2020. Number 3, to help international students during COVID campaign, where we asked the Canadian government to give international students the same supports that domestic students received during the COVID-19 pandemic. We also organized expert panels, discussions on Parliament Hill about Canada's Iran policy. The first was the Discussing Canada's Iran Policy campaign, where we invited 3 experts to discuss Canada's foreign policy toward Iran. The second was a panel called Canada's Role in the Middle East, which we held with the Institute of Peace and Diplomacy with former ambassadors and officials. The next priority that I'll address in the advocacy against sanctions and war, being a voice against sanctions and war, is something that many of our community have come to expect of the ICC. And this is a role that the ICC has tried to fill in the past 2 years with the following actions. On May 2018, the ICC organized a letter signed by 10 Canadian organizations asking the Canadian government to support the Iran nuclear deal. On August 2018, we asked the Foreign Minister, Chrystia Freeland, to support the Iran nuclear deal, which resulted in a response where the minister affirmed supporting the deal. In January 2019, the ICC launched an email campaign in which ICC supporters asked Canada to stand against Trump unilateral sanctions on Iran. In October 2019, organized a letter signed by 6 Canadian organizations asking Canada to stand for peace. In September of this year, the ICC stood against Trump's unilateral actions at the UN Security Council, which was seen by most observers as an assault on the groundbreaking nuclear deal. Lastly, in January 2020, the ICC helped organize anti-war protests in Montreal and Toronto, working with local activists and increasing our presence in Montreal. The ICC also worked to combat smear campaigns against pro-peace Iranian Canadians by foreign affiliated individuals and groups in the past 2 years. For example, in October 2018, we sent a letter to the Minister of Public Safety around an attack by Australian-based Imam Tawhidi on the ICC and its volunteers. Similarly, in June 2019, we asked the Minister of Public Safety and Democratic Institution to combat election interference by the formerly listed terrorist group MEK or Mujahideen Khalq. Likewise, we condemned and called media attention to foreign-linked online attacks smearing tied to Saudi Arabia on an Iranian Canadian MP. Another topic that the ICC has passionately pursued in the past 2 years is the issue of corrupt money coming to Canada from Iran. We work to combat a worrying trend where Canada is increasingly becoming a destination for corrupt money, and work to see embezzlers and corrupt officials bringing ill-gotten gain to Canada from Iran to be brought to justice and not to be allowed to invest here. To this end, we undertook the following actions. Number 1, in March 2019, we launched a petition that gathered thousands of signatures asking Canada to investigate Reza Khabari and Marjan Alaagha, who were reportedly bringing their money to Canada and investing it. Similarly, on August 2020, we sent a letter to Canadian minister asking them to investigate the cases of corrupt money entering Canada. Finally, on September 2020, we launched a campaign asking MPs to launch an investigation into recent cases of individuals who have been accused of leveraging international credibility and sound economy to launder money. It should be noted that some of these accused embezzlers and corrupt individuals have threatened to sue the ICC, but that the ICC continued to advance this mission. The issue of human rights in Iran is something that has perhaps become even more important in the past 2 years, and one that the ICC has been active on as a key priority during this time. Not only have the Iranian people suffered by constant threats of war and sanctions, but have faced human rights violations and repressions at home. Like many events in Iran, these violations and repressions included Iranian Canadians. This is why the ICC asked for the immediate return of Maryam Momeni in June 2018, demanded that the Iranian people's right to protest and express themselves to be respected in November of 2019, and held a vigil for the victims of the protest in Iran in the same month. Another priority that the ICC has been active on in the past 2 years is helping Iran with the multiple crises that have befallen the country since 2018. This includes, number one, when the ICC worked with the Canadian Red Cross to create a joint initiative on April 2019 to fundraise for the flash flood that were affecting Iranians in that time. Number two, when the ICC asked the Canadian government a commitment to provide support throughout the Canadian Red Cross to Iran during the flash flood through this same initiative, after which the Canadian government donated $250,000 to provide emergency assistance in impacted region in Iraq. This initiative was extremely successful and raised more than $150,000, helping the Red Cross provide 296,000 people with shelter, 29,000 people with health interventions, and 2,600 food parcels. The next priority we will talk about is the shooting down of Flight 752, which was a tremendous tragedy for our whole community and in which the ICC attempted to help to the best of its ability. Here in January 2020, once the truth about the shootdown became known, the ICC condemned the shootdown and the lies about it from the Iranian government afterwards, calling for a full investigation of the incident. We also held a vigil in collaboration with Iranian Canadian student organizations from the University of Toronto and York. On the side of advocacy on Flight 752, we sent a letter to Prime Minister Trudeau asking the Canadian government to help provide accountability, transparency, and justice to the victims of their families. We also launched an advocacy campaign asking our supporters as Canadian politicians to fight for accountability, transparency, and justice for Flight 752. Accountability, transparency, and justice are something that we continued to call for since the tragedy, and expect the next board of the ICC to continue this important work. The last ICC priority that we will talk about is the ICC's action to help Iranians in Iran and Iranian Canadians during the COVID-19 pandemic. Throughout February of this year, the ICC asked the Canadian government to help with the Iranian Canadians trapped in Iran after the border shutdown. In April of this year, we created a list of Iranian Canadian businesses and encouraged our community to help support these local businesses. In June, as mentioned earlier, we launched an advocacy campaign to help international students during COVID-19. In March, we asked the Canadian government and the Red Cross to help Iran during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we also signed an open letter asking to end US sanctions on Iran during the crisis likewise. And as mentioned earlier, we launched an online survey about the impact of COVID-19 on Iranian Canadians and their expectations of the ICC. Lastly, we also worked with other organizations, such as the Persian Gulf Charity, to gather financial support for the Iranian people during COVID-19. I'll also discuss membership briefly as part of my presentation. I'm proud to announce that today the ICC has more members than it has ever had in the past 4 years, with about 3,500 members across the country As recently as 2018, the ICC had only had 1,027 members exclusively from Ontario. I am happy to welcome these new members into the organization and hope that they remain to contribute to the organization with their talents, passions, and ideas. Lastly, I'll briefly discuss the legal action of 2019-2020. This initial action concerned the membership list and was launched by 4 members of the ICC and was conditionally settled. Since then, another motion launched by these 4 members, heard by the court on November 2nd, and was dismissed. And cause deliberations are still ongoing. This case has put tremendous pressure on the ICC board, increased its workload, and strained its financial resources. Throughout this process, the ICC board attempted to reduce costs to the best of their abilities. The board members also personally donated towards the legal cost of the case, especially at the beginning of the proceeding. Along with ICC supporters, our suggested next step for the incoming board are to review and update the ICC bylaws, as well as including conflict resolution mechanism within the bylaw. Thank you all for listening. It was a pleasure serving this organization and community for the past 2 years as the president and the 3 years before that as the board member. I wish the best of luck to the incoming board and the president. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Gassemi. Are there any questions or comments to be noted? Mr. Mongeon, please advise.
We have quite a number of questions. I notice, Chair, that you have allocated time at least until 1:25 for such questions. So in the order posed, I would be happy to relay these questions from members of the meeting to Ms. Gassemi.
Please proceed.
Ms. Gassemi, the first question comes from Bijan Ahmadi. Ms. Gassemi, my question is regarding privacy of members. Many members have concerns about privacy of their information. I know that this has been the topic of legal disputes as well. Could you please explain what your board has done to protect their privacy, and what's your recommendation for future board members? I note, Ms. Gassemi, that your mic is still on mute and you'd want to unmute it before.
I have to acknowledge that the privacy is still an ongoing concern for a lot of members. It's been a concern for a lot of members for the past 2 years. Is somehow the subject, part of subject of the lawsuit ongoing, which I'm not getting to the details of that. Having said that, I do acknowledge that the privacy issue is still ongoing. I highly recommend that the next board look into the bylaw of the organization, look into the legal channels that it's available to them to protect the privacy of the members. As of now, we hear a lot of concerns from members coming in, but this is the status of organization as of now. I think for the next board, this should be a priority to look into this concern that comes from the members.
The next question comes to us from Amir Kadir. There are a number of questions posed, and I'm only going to read to the first question mark. A few weeks ago, documents were revealed by a member of ICC showing that the ICC Board of Directors had sent a letter in November to former Green Party leadership candidate Dimitri Lascaris using ICC letterhead, asking for his assistance to recruit non-Iranian members to the ICC to help the Board of Directors' preferred slate of candidates win in the upcoming election. In the letter, the Board of Directors' opposition was labeled with accusations, which I'm not repeating. These accusations have very strict punishments in Iran, starting with 5 years imprisonment. How can we accept your report if this troublesome fact is not included in the report?
The answer to Mr. Khadir's question is that, which his question is partially contains some partially incorrect information. I reached out to the former Green Party candidates in my personal capacity. I did not ask to recruit non-Iranian members. There are a lot of Iranians involved in Green Party, and specifically that campaign. And I welcome all members, like from all backgrounds, to join the organization, is as part of the organization. That's the way we can cherish this organization to expand beyond what it's called, expand beyond our own circle. Having said that, there was a clarification in regards to this issue that I sent to Ottawa Citizen as well as Majale Hafte. I'm not too sure if any of the channels published that, but Mr. Dimitri himself published a clarification on the details of these proceedings. I would like to ask Marcel, I would be able to send you the link shortly, and you could just share that with the members, which will address majority of the concerns of Mr. Khadir in that regards.
Thank you. The next question comes to us from Nima Machouf. Again, there are many questions, and I will only read up to the first question mark that I read. The question is as follows. My question is regarding the legal case ICC has been involved with for almost 2 years. The case started with a simple, lawful request from 4 members for the membership registry of the organization based on Section 307 of the Ontario Corporations Act. Why did the Board of Directors not respond to this simple, lawful request?
The answer to this question is pretty straightforward. There are a lot of details involving this case and the ongoing settlement. I would love to explain all the details from A to Z to all members. Unfortunately, I'm not at the liberty to explain the details of the proceeding from the day one till today, and I would like the chair to address this question if possible. At this point, unfortunately, due to the proceeding, I am not able to answer that question in details.
Thank you. The next question comes to us from Madi Tarabi Kia. Again, there are many questions. I will read it up to the first question. And there are also possibly derogatory remarks in here with the name of someone that I will exclude. The question relates to the panel on Canada's role in the Middle East, which was organized by ICC jointly with the Institute for Peace and Diplomacy in February 2019. The collaboration with the Institute is a clear case of conflict of interest. How did the board allow the conflict of interest to occur?
This is also a clear response. There was no indication of conflict of interest. The board continuously collaborates with a lot of organizations, as well as Institute of Peace and Diplomacy, and there was no conflict of interest.
Thank you. The next question is from Bahram Jalili, and it's a question generally for yourself as representing the ICC board. Is membership of the ICC exclusively for Iranian people living in Canada, or can people from other countries become members?
I'm going to read the response to this question from the ICC bylaws specifically. There's Article 15 that talks about the membership. It would be great, Marcel, if you could just put that up. It's the bylaw link under the ICC website. The section 1 talks about the membership, and it says the ICC membership it shall be open to every person who agrees with the ICC laws and supports the aim of the objectives of the ICC. To this end, all individuals age 14 and over shall be eligible for membership without discrimination based on race, nationality, or ethnic origin, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, age, and physical disability if they are residing in Canada. Such person shall be admitted to the membership upon complying with all membership requirements of ICC to join and accept the Constitution of the ICC and any rules or bylaws passed pursuant to that Constitution. Pay the set minimum annual membership fee for the applicable category of membership until the first board of directors is elected. The initial annual membership fee at this point is $10. Affirms his or her acceptance of the principles outlined in the preamble of ICC Constitution in the method determined by the board of directors. Each member shall be issued a membership card provided by the representative region which he or she has joined, which at this point members will receive confirmation in email. A register of members will be maintained by the ICC. There shall be 4 classes of membership, namely regular member, honorary member, youth member, and affiliated members. And that's all about the membership. And then it goes on and talks about different types of membership. But I think the bylaw clearly states that the organization belongs to whoever resides in Canada, regardless of their ethnicity and background.
The next question comes to us from Keve Shahruz. Ms. Ghasemi, CSIS indicated last year that Iran's regime, along with those of China and Venezuela, tried to influence Canada's elections through nomination processes. Can you explain why the ICC objected to foreign interference by various entities, but said nothing about the Iranian regime's influence campaign, which CSIS has openly addressed?
I don't have the knowledge of the report that Mr. Shahruz is talking about. What we've been seeing during the last election was the clear interference of a non-Canadian organization that it's residing and it's funded outside of Canada in the Canadian election. And that's what we addressed.
The next question is also from Mr. Shahruz. Ms. Ghasemi, the son of Ms. Mumbini, claims you took no steps to help her or the family. Can you explain why you claim to have helped her when the family says otherwise?
I explained in the report, and it's in the president report, the steps that the organization took. There's also links associated to that. I'm sorry if the son of Ms. Mumbini feels that way, but the reality is we've took some steps, and all the steps are available online. It's available to public for the reference.
So the next question comes to us in Farsi. I'm going to ask my colleague Bakram Jalayer to read it in Farsi, and then I will then read the English translation.
Sure, thank you. این سوال از خانم نیما مشروفه. خانم قاسمی، سوال به این شرحه: شما که ادعا دارید در مقابل پولشویی مبارزه می‌کنید، چرا علیه لایحه S319 S319 که یکی از اهدافش جلوگیری از پولشویی سران سپاه پاسداران و وابستگان به رژیم ایران بود اقدام کردید؟ متشکرم.
And my understanding is that she has asked, you claim to be fighting money laundering. Why did the ICC fight against Bill S319 that was aimed at stopping money laundering by the IRGC and those related to the Islamic Republic of Iran?
I believe these are two separate issues, and what Ms. Mashuf is referring in terms of S219. It's not quite correct. So we continue to fight in case of any money laundering related to anyone that is landing in Canada. If that's part of any sort of bill, we continue that fight. It's ongoing. There are a lot of people that coming to Canada and bring the money through these channels. And as you see, even in the petition, it was initiated back in March. The campaigns initiated this year. Our community is very concerned about these issues. We continue to fight for that. I would like to ask the next board to continue to fight for that, regardless of all the threats that we have been receiving and they might be receiving. And S219 also, it's about sanctions. It's not about money laundering.
The next question comes to us from Arsalan Kanamiyapur. Again, there are many questions posed. I will read it up until the first question mark. The ICC has announced widely that they are going after those who have brought corrupt money to Canada. You have indicated this in your report at slide 11. How were these people chosen?
There are reports, it's very straightforward, Mr. Kanamiyapur. The name of these people is all over all sort of media, reliable sources, credible sources, Iranians and non-Iranian sources. So that's one factor. And the other factor is there is a clear indication and a relation between these people and Canada. They either travel continuously to Canada to bring their money, or they're in the process of their permanent residency to be the permanent residents of Canada. And that's how it's becoming a Canadian issue, and it's an issue that our government should push for it to avoid Canada to become a heaven for all sort of dirty money that it comes not only from Iran but from other countries as well. The cases that we are focusing at this point is the cases that we are aware of. If you are aware of any other cases that the ICC haven't been involved in, I highly recommend that you send an email with all the resources to the next board and ask them to push for that.
The next question for you comes from Babak Payami. And again, there are more than one question. I will read it up until the first question. There's a reference made to a joint letter. What is your position with respect to alleged false information that was disseminated on behalf of the ICC?
This is an irony that Mr. Babak Payami is asking that question. He is one of the applicants of this lawsuit. He's been involved in all sort of back and forths around that letter. I would like to have the opportunity to discuss all the details about that letter, all the back and forth with the applicants and the ICC side. Again, once again, as Mr. Payami knows, I'm not at the liberty to discuss all those details. And I would like to pass on this question to the chair. I will not answer this question.
Thank you. I have a question from Amir Kadir. I read and listened to Mrs. Ghassemi's report. May I suggest that we all reject this report because of the information that we received of the ICC Board of Directors sending a letter to the Green Party leadership candidate Lascaris using ICC letterhead. There's no question, it's merely a comment that I've duplicated for the meeting as well. The next question comes to us from Kevin Charuz. Ms. Ghassemi, you claim to have sought accountability for the PS 752 attack. The spokesperson for the families of victims has openly stated that you have provided no assistance and have in fact hindered his efforts. can you explain why you would behave in this way that the families of the victims find you as standing in the way of accountability?
Once again, I am sorry that the particular person, Mr. Smileyun, feels this way. In our board member in multiple occasions tried to reach out to him and consult with him and get his feedback. Unfortunately, Mr. Smileyun kept shutting down any approach from the ICC and ICC board members. Having said that, we continued to advocate for accountability and transparency and justice for this case, regardless of the feeling of Mr. Smileyun towards the organization. I have to say that that must be a priority for the organization. It was a priority for the organization, and all the documents and the links are available on the website.
The next item I have is a comment from Shojaeddin Zian, and he has resubmitted it. And the comment goes on at length. It states as follows: whereas most activities of the present board were directed, 1, to politically give support to the Islamic regime, 2, to close all venues allowing positive dialogues among members and for making decisions without consulting the membership, 3, to refuse to give access to their opponent candidates to membership contacts, resulting in the launching of a judicial procedure, 4, making derogatory public comments.
Well, sorry, Marcel, you have to do one at a time. So,
well, no, it's not. It's sorry, yeah. Ms. I'm presenting it to you as what has in fact been typed in, and it's not a question, as I've already indicated to you. It doesn't need a response. It's merely a comment because the chair has invited questions and comments. So a member has the opportunity to make this comment. And I'm reading his comment, which I will then duplicate in the Q&A box as having been dealt with. So the 4th point is making derogatory public comments and allegations towards active members of the Iranian Canadian community who weren't sharing political views and actions. And the conclusion is that the member believes that we should reject the actions of the board and reject your one-sided and incomplete report. It doesn't require an answer.
But I need to clarify that the information provided by Mr. Ziayan is incorrect. As you see in the report, and all the members can refer to the report and the ICC website, there's a clear indication that what are the ICC priorities, and I also explained as how ICC ended up with these priorities. And the very first point that Mr. Ziayan had mentioned, that I would like to request to clarify that this is to accuse an organization which is Iranian Canadian, and it's Canadian first, and it's been always acting based on their bylaws and the best interest of their members. So that's technically an accusation. I would not respond to that. In terms of consultation, I have given the examples of the consultations that it's been out there. Having said that, I also mentioned that the workload of the legal case for the past 2 years took up so much time of this board, so that kind of blocked the board from being more productive. And on this point, I agree with Mr. Ziayan that the board should have been more active, should have had more surveys out there, but unfortunately, as a result of the ongoing legal case, a lot of resources of the organization was blocked for 2 years. In terms of the membership and opposing members and access to their membership, as of today, and everyone knows that all candidates of this election could have access to the membership list if and only if they would fill out an affidavit under Section 307 and would pay the reasonable cost. Having said that, not all candidates have done so, but the membership list was available to all candidates through legal channels if they would like to access that. And the fourth point, unfortunately, I missed that. If you want to repeat, I could just.
As I said, it was a comment, not a question, so I'm going to move on.
Okay.
The next question comes to us from Human Razavi. There are many questions asked. I will read up until the first question mark. Ms. Gassemi, thank you for the AGM report and your presidency. You highlighted the achievements of your team over the last 2 years. However, isn't this just half the truth? Do you not agree that you should have highlighted the failures and mistakes, mainly focusing on activist agendas and dividing the community on fictive lines?
The answer to this question is straightforward. This comment is incorrect. Whatever I presented and what Mr. Razavi is claiming the board has done, it's also incorrect, and it's not the truth. Whatever it was, all the activities of the organization and anything in my report is available on ICC website. It's not something that I came up with it overnight. It's if you go to the history of the website, you will see all these details. There are links associated to that, and that's my president report. Anything else that you mentioned, Mr. Razavi, I do object that.
So the next question comes from KP Alipur. Dear, and again, there are multiple questions. I'll read up to the first one. Ms. Gassemi, in your report, you have claimed that you have worked hard on the case of Ukrainian Flight 752. What kind of relationship have you established with the families of the victims?
I think I partially explained that. There were steps that obviously was taken immediately after the incident. They were attempts from the board members to reach out to the family members. Also, at some point, ICC initiated a kind of a small campaign to make sure that the family members can connect with one another. As per request of one of the family members, we shared the information of the family member with the other family member for them to be able to be in touch with one another. They were also fundraising, ongoing fundraising in support of the families, that the ICC continuously supported all those fundraising and tried to as much as the best of our ability, we tried to encourage all the community members to participate in this fundraising and try to console with the families.
The next question comes from Faraday Smith. Ms. Gassemi notes that the board sought advice from professionals. How was the advisor chosen, and are they looking for the advisor to take responsibility for providing incorrect advice, which cost over $60,000?
The comment that you had mentioned, Mrs. Smith, is incorrect. ICC did not have any advisor that cost the organization over $60,000. If you're talking about the legal case, which the details of the expenses related to that, I will let the auditor on file to get into the details of that, as also there's no $60,000 worth of debt in the organization, and we'll get to that details later on. But if you're referring to anything regarding the legal case, once again, I would love to explain all the details of this case from day one, March 21st, 2019, till today. Unfortunately, I am not at the liberty to get into details. If you have more questions about the legal case, I will pass on those questions to the chair.
The next question comes from Manny Mobini. There's a suggestion that there's a low number of membership for the ICC. What is being done to campaign and have more Iranian Canadians involved going forward?
I'm sorry, Marcel, I think I missed the first part of your question.
The suggestion is that the ICC represents a low proportion of the Iranian Canadians in Canada. What is the ICC doing to increase that number?
That is correct. What has happened is, if you notice, in terms of the trend of the membership of the organization, and I've explained, there are ups and downs throughout the years from 2007 onward. Even today that we're sitting at the highest number of members for this organization in the history of the organization, the organization has the membership of the organization represents a small portion of the community, and that must increase. What the board has done in the past, and as part of the previous boards that I was on it, in AGM 2018, we recommended that the organization moves from the provincial level to the federal level, and give access to the members on a federal level, and mobilize members on a federal level so that there are more participation. As you see, as a result of that motion, today the organization has over 3,500 members that they're coming from across Canada. And I won't be on the board moving forward, but I highly recommend that whoever take on the next board to continue this momentum and keep reaching out to the members outside of Ontario, across Canada, and increase the membership and get them involved.
For people who are furiously typing in questions, I note that I have 128 questions in the queue that we're not going to get to. I will ask you, given the time available, 2 more questions. The first of those questions is, you seem to be concerned with what happens in the United States and what President Trump does. Shouldn't we be more concerned with the actions of Khamenei and his government?
I am going to rephrase this question, and I'm going to explain. When I said Mr. Referred to Trump and US administration, we were talking about the immigration cases in Canada for people who've been already welcomed and vetted by the Canadian government, that they've been impacted by anything has happened in the US and during US election. And as part of that report that I had mentioned, we brought up all these concerns to the Ministry of Immigration, and unfortunately, most of them were addressed.
The last question is asked by Behzad Mirzabadi, and it is, there is an allegation that Iranian Canadians traveling to Iran are threatened and intimidated by the regime to spy for them in Canada. What is ICC doing to address this issue?
For this issue, they have to be more specific. There were cases in the past that in every single case, ICC raised their concerns with the Canadian government. But as of today, there's no ongoing, at the best of my knowledge, there's no ongoing cases in regards to the Iranian Canadians. Having said that, in any of these cases, if the family members of these individuals would ask the ICC not to get involved in the cases as such, in the past, ICC would refrain from getting involved. And the other cases, ICC would always reach out to the government and they would ask for the best course of action.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ghasemi. Mr. Chair, I point out that we've arrived at the allotted amount of time for this section, and I turn the meeting back to you. I also apologize to the 115 pending questions, which of course we don't have the time to reach. And so accordingly, I am in the system putting them all into the dismissed queue. Not that they're not important. Of course, all questions from members are important. The problem is there just isn't enough time in the time frame you've allotted for us.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ghasemi, and thank you, Mr. Manjon. May I have a motion to accept the President's Report, AGM, December 13, 2020. Is there a mover? Mr. Mongeon, please advise.
I have Ms. Dorna Majdami, who has made the motion.
Is there a seconder? Mr. Mongeon, please advise.
I have Ali Asghari, who has seconded the motion.
A motion has been made that the President's Report, AGM, December 13, 2020, be accepted. This motion has been seconded. This motion is now open to discussion. Mr. Mongeon, please advise those present how they may participate in the discussion, if any.
So as we've already used, I have parties in the Q&A queue. Because of the length of the previous queue, I am jumping down to the current time code to see if there are any comments or questions with respect to the motion. One moment, please. I'm not seeing any questions. Oh. So I have a comment from Emir Kadir. This is an incomplete report and should be rejected. I have it's a comment from Babak Payami that we should include all of the unanswered questions in the monitor's report, which I leave for your subsequent consideration, Mr. Chair. I have Bijan Ahmadi, who says he would like to take this opportunity to thank the board for their hard work and all the hours they spent for this organization and our community as volunteers. I invite members to show their support by voting for the report of Ms. Gassemi. One moment, please. I'm just conducting some further triage of what's available. Someone is questioning the Zoom application in front of us. They are concerned that when we conduct polls, that although there are there are now 682 participants in the meeting, that they are concerned why there aren't that many people polling. The answer, Mr. Chair, is very simple. They are not using the Zoom application. The comment from Hossein Amushai suggests that we should let people have time to install the application. I point out that the first notices for today's meeting, Mr. Chair, which included comments about getting ready for the meeting, included links to the Zoom program and what would happen, and that there have been other reminders that have been issued. I leave it to you to decide if any action will be needed. I have further comments as follows, and again, I'm noticing that I have about 20 or 30 comments. Elmira Mali suggests that it is an incomplete report. Kayan Razavi says it was a complete report and should be accepted. Amir Hassan Gassaminajad Tafreshi points out that he appreciates the great work that the board has done. Human Razavi suggests that the AGM report is not satisfactory, especially excluding any mistakes or issues and not acknowledging the problems. It should be dismissed and modified. Afra Abnar states, thanks for the amazing work for supporting our community. Mohammed Reza Sharbaf Akbari says, all the questions must be included in the president's report, please. Reza Janban suggests that we should respectfully reject the report. Javad Asadi suggests that the reporting was haphazard, should be rejected. Syed Hossein Mortazavi says, I would like to thank the board and encourage members to vote for the report. Ziba Gabi says this is incomplete and inaccurate report. Changiz Sadr says, why was the report selectively and incompletely answering questions? Neda Rad says, I agree that this report is incomplete and should be rejected. Maziar Momeni suggests that the motion should be rejected. Kayan Razavi says, thank you, Ms. Gassemi, for your hard work. Amira Sadi says, I'd like to mention in regards to privacy concerns, those privacy laws that are currently in place to allow for transparency, and not having this transparency can allow for dangerous outside forces to meddle with the organization. In the case of the privacy bylaws, how will the ICC ensure members that outside and illegitimate agendas are not governing the ideas of ICC, but rather those of the members? That is a question, Mr. Chair. Would you like Ms. Gassemi to respond to that?
Yes, please. You'll have to unmute.
Marcel, would you be able to repeat the full question? I didn't get the last part.
I'm sorry, I've already dismissed it off of my screen. My recollection is that the question was, there's a concern about outside forces to the ICC. What should be done to make sure that those forces cannot, in fact, interfere with the objectives of the ICC?
As of today, I can confirm that there is no indication of any outside forces in the organization. Obviously, we took extra measures of transparency this year. One, as an example, is Audited financial report that will confirm that. As of today, there's no indication of the cases that some people might perceive. The privacy, however, is the concern of the members. They're concerned about their personal information to be shared with other members or anyone outside of the membership pool. I have received late phone calls that some members were receiving calls from other members. They're very agitated. I have received emails from some members that were not from Iranian background, and they've been threatened by some of the candidates to pull out their votes. And cases like this are valid cases. We have to acknowledge that. Members of this organization should feel safe. They shouldn't feel threatened or uncomfortable sharing their personal information with others. Having said that, the current situation is that any member who presents an affidavit under Section 307 would be able to get the membership list and should be able to contact with other members. As I said earlier, I encourage the next board to look into, after the settlement is over, to look into other legal channels that they can put in place to protect the privacy of the members.
Mr. Chair, I have, again in my queue, somewhere in the vicinity of about 60 or 70 further comments. May I suggest, in the interests of time, that I read the next 10, and then we can proceed with the meeting after that?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, so Sharzad Arshadi suggests that the report should be rejected. Arsalan Kendemipour says, given the deficiencies of this report and the misinformation, the report should be rejected. Hamid Reza Farman Bar suggests the report should be accepted. Shoja Eden Zelen says, I support Mr. Kadir's motion. Well, I'm sorry, that's the motions. Those are out of order. We've already indicated that. Mojan Satabchi suggests, please thank the board for their efforts. Not easy to work in such an environment. Mohad Reza Sherbaf Akbari suggests we should respectfully reject the report. Nazanin Afshin Jam Makai says there is too much that has been left out in the report. This cannot be accepted. Mohammad Soliman says, thank you, I accept the report. Mariam Torabi Kia says, it is an incomplete report, they should fix it. Yasser Karashi says the report should be rejected. Ali Sartipi says the report is obviously incomplete and should be rejected. Mariam Eskandari suggests that the report is not acceptable. Seti Manachi says the report should be rejected since it's incomplete. Nilüfer Momeni suggests this motion of a board that bans its members from social media should be rejected. Those are the 10 additional comments, Mr. Chair, and I notice we still have somewhere in the vicinity of 212 open comments on the system, which have not been dealt with.
Thank you, Mr. Manjam. It has been moved and seconded that the President's Report AGM December 13, 2020 be accepted. You will now see a poll pop up on your screen. Those in favor of the motion, please click yes on the poll pop-up. Those opposed to the motion, please click no on your poll pop-up. Please vote on the motion now. Mr. Manjam, please advise.
So at present, those who have the Zoom application, in fact, installed, are voting on the motion in progress. Because of the comments and the information, we're going to let this pop-up poll run for 60 seconds, a full minute, in terms of letting people access the poll. We've also had a technical question during the time, which is of interest to everybody, which is what prevents people from voting twice or 3 times? Can't they sign in on multiple devices? In fact, that's not possible. Each link only allows people to access this from a single device. And so we've already safeguarded against that. So, Mr. Chair, 1 minute has now passed. I have concluded the poll. Do you want to see the results?
Yes, please. What is the result of the vote on this motion?
Okay, the motion to move and second the President's report, it has been moved and seconded that the President's report be accepted. The results are being shared on the screen. 278 people have voted in favor. 332 people have voted against it. And therefore, the motion to accept the President's report has been defeated.
Thank you, Mr. Manjam. The motion is defeated. The motion, the President's Report, AGM December 13, 2020, is not accepted. I turn now to agenda item number 6, Treasurer's Report. A link to this report was sent to ICC members and posted on the ICC website on November 18, 2020. We will now hear the Treasurer's Report, and I call upon Suda Gassemi, the President of the ICC, to present the report.
I have to mention that this report includes all the numbers as of all the financial numbers as of September 30th, 2020. And then there's a column on the first page. You're going to see there's a column in regards to October 31st, 2020. Having said that, all these numbers are drafted financials that we already prepared, and it will be finalized when the year closes and the next accountant and the auditor will look into the numbers. So these are all the preliminary numbers that we have gathered so far. And as you see and the financials for September 30th was already up in the ICC website. The October 31st column is in addition to that. You're going to see that on the cash movement, and this is only about the cash movement of the accounts. It does not necessarily include all the pledges for the donations. Shows the movements from month of September to October. In particular, in month of October, due to the legal proceeding, we had received a lot of donations to be able to carry on with the matters related to the AGM and the legal proceeding from the donors. And I would like to thank all those donors at this point. We wouldn't be here today if it wouldn't be because of their donations to the organization. In addition to this cash flow, kind of cash flow presentation that is up there, I'm going to read the comments added to that afterwards. The board was able to raise a 20, and this is as part of the mandate of the organization. We should explain based on what has happened in terms of the financials of the organization afterwards, after the information session. A lot of you have attended the information session already. And for those of you who don't know, the purpose of the information session was to discuss the financial matters of the organization with the members to give them an outlook of how the organization is, where the organization was at that point, and ask for the members to help the organization to be able to carry on with its financials. So as part of that, the board was able to raise $21,762.91 in the period after September 14th, most notably through the information session and efforts following that session. As a result of the information session, the ICC was successful in raising approximately $9,000 toward the AGM, which is related today. A total amount of $16,742 received in pledges in sum of $5,020 for the total sum of $21,762.91 raised towards the AGM. I would like to emphasize again that these numbers are as of the date that the report was prepared, and they have increased as of today. Fortunately, you would see the detail. Hopefully, you will see the details of those in the next financial statement. The part 2 says the ICC also had outstanding accounts with its first counsel, which was a matter of concern for a lot of members, Gardner Roberts LLP, with respect to the above noted matter in the amount of $42,330.02. And this was sitting in the liability section of the financial statement. The ICC was successful in lowering the Gardner Roberts debt from the sum of $42,330 to the full and final sum of $10,000 as of today. From this $10,000 has been reduced to $7,000, that the next installment payment will be paid out at this month and the next month. Lowering Gardner Roberts debt from the sum of 42, sorry, I'm just repeating that, to 10,000 with a reasonable payment plan, which I have explained the reasonable payment plan, which at this point is 7,000, 2 payments, one in December and one in the January. Reducing the payable balance of the legal fees tremendously. The board member also, and there was in the financial statements that you see on the website of the organization, you see that the board of directors have incurred $23,508 in terms of expenses that they have paid out of their own pocket for the organization over the past two years, 2019 and 2020 in particular. Majority of those are related to the ongoing legal case, and other expenses related to administrative expenses. I have also explained all of these information sessions, but for the benefit of other members that they have not participated in the information session, there are roughly about like 10,000 to 12,000 administrative expenses for the organization each year. A good portion of it goes towards the website, the nation builder, the database maintenance, and all that. So these are the expenses that they've been paid out of the pocket of the board members. As the board members have decided in October 2020 that they will donate a good portion of this to the organization for the benefit of the organization, so that it reduces the amount of liability of the organization to the board member from $23,508 to $8,265. In multiple occasions in the information session, people have claimed that this is a loan. I have to confirm that this is no loan. The ICC never had any loans or didn't have any loans to any third party or any financial institutions. These are the expense reimbursements of the board members that at this point About 15,000 of those will be granted as donations from the board members to the organization. And the next step is talking about the legal expenses that the ICC have incurred during month of October and early November. The ICC incurred as a result of the second motion brought up by 4 applicants against the organization. The ICC incurred the sum of $16,681 in legal costs during the October and November. As a result of this motion brought against the ICC in September 2020 and heard in Superior Court of Justice on November 2020, the motion was dismissed by the judge on November 3rd. This balance is still outstanding as of, this was prepared November 5th, but as of today, which is December 13th, this balance is still outstanding. The cost of this proceeding, the 16,000, is not included in the cash movement of the statement of the operation. The ICC is in the process of trying to recapture these legal costs from the applicants. As of today, there was no final resolution on paying these costs from the applicants to the organization. So this matter, as of today, is before the court and is still outstanding, and hopefully will be resolved soon within the next couple of months. These are the updates that I have for you in regards to the financials. And I know that we have addressed a lot of nitty-gritty details of the financials for the past 2 years in the information session as well. I would like to request if you could just, like Marcel, if you could just pull up the link of that information session somewhere in the chat box. So for those who would like to know more details about the financials of the organization.
The details have already been pushed out into the chat box.
Thank you so much.
The treasurer's report.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gassemi. Are there any questions or comments to be noted? I understand that Babak Amintafreshi, the treasurer of the Iranian Canadian Congress, is available to answer questions and to respond to comments, if any. Mr. Mongeon, please advise.
I'm just trying to catch up. People have to understand that the Q&A box isn't an appropriate, isn't appropriate for things that we're already aware of. I do have certain questions. We have a number of questions. One of my concerns as well is that people seem to be, I'm going to politely say, a little fractious and a little belligerent about different issues. And so I have lots of people who put in lots of comments, but they're not responsive to your request for questions. I do have a few questions that I would now like to pose. And is Mr. Babak Amintafreshi supposed to be in the presenters portion of this meeting as well, Mr. Chair?
If he has to address the issue, I'll ask Ms. Gassemi to first let us know who's going to respond and if he's available to do so.
Okay, Ms. Gassemi.
I will respond to questions to that matter. Bob, I was
Thank you.
supposed to move the motion.
So I have a question from Negme Farazzi. The report is a statement of movements in funds. Such statements focus on the change in funds between two published balance sheets. There has been no balance sheet for ICC as of the end of September 2020 to compare this with. Is this report then a true picture of the financial state of the organization when it does not take into account the opening negative balance of the organization at the start of 2020?
I can clarify that. If you go to the website of the ICC, you would see the drafted financial statement as of September 2020 on the website of the ICC. These notes are the additional notes to that. In terms of the negative balances that had mentioned, the negative balances are included in that financial statement as of September 2020, which is the balance sheet and income statement on the website. Having said that, this report, it explains how those negative balances has been reduced. Also, I would like to emphasize that 2020 have not been closed. When the 2020 full year, it's been getting, like the financials is closed, you're going to see those movements in a full picture, but you won't see those negative balances in the financial statements of 2020 year end anymore, because they're not there anymore. In particular, the $42,000 in legal expenses that the organization was owing to the Gardner Roberts, it won't be there anymore. As I believe, as at December 31st, 2020, this amount will be reduced only to $3,500. And this is a good comparison for yourself. So if you pull up that report, which is already on the website, and look into the details of this report, you will be able to get the details that you were looking for. The purpose of this report in particular was to capture what has happened after the information session and after September 30th, issuing the September 30th financial report. And I hope that when you compare these two, or just put it aside one by one, you could just see how the movement have been moved.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to suggest for time that I've got time for 2 more questions. Is that acceptable to you?
Yes.
I have a question from Tayez Fakhri. I am asking this question regarding the financial report. Why didn't the board organize a special general meeting aligned with its bylaws to explain to its members the tremendous costs of the lawsuits made by the applicants against the corporation?
As Mr. Tayaz already know, this was an ongoing discussion with the ICC lawyers, and as soon as we could get a green light from the court to be able to have an SGM and explain the details of the costs associated to the legal case, we've done so. Having said that, there was no need for that SGM, and those SGM was canceled as a result of the information session. As a result of information session, the organization was able to carry forward with their business. This is, I think I already explained this in the information session as well. The board would love to have all sort of information sessions, explain all the details about the legal proceeding way ahead of time, but we had our hands were restricted and still restricted. So any further question in regards to the legal case, I would like to pass it on to the chair.
I have the last question from Changiz Sadr. There are many incorrect and incomplete items on the report. How can we trust that the report is correct?
Mr. Sadr, these are the information that is coming directly from the bank account of the ICC. There is no incorrect information in this report. All the numbers given in this report coming straight and direct from the bank account of the ICC. If your judgment is that these numbers are not correct, I'm telling you they're correct. They're coming from the bank statements. I don't know what to say to convince you that they're correct, but I can confirm that they're coming straight from the financial statements of the organization, from the bills that we received from the lawyers, and there's a backup for all of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes the period for questions on the statement.
Thank you, Mr. Marjan, and thank you, Ms. Ghashemi. May I have a motion to accept the treasurer's report? Is there a mover? Mr. Marjan, please advise.
One moment, please. I have Mohsen Kaneki, who has moved.
Is there a seconder, Mr. Marjan?
One moment, please. One challenge we're facing, Mr. Chair, is because of the large number of people putting information into the Q&A system, that we're having some problem. I have the motion seconded by Ruhala Mafi.
Okay, this motion has been seconded. This motion is now open to discussion. Mr. Mongeon, please advise those present how they may participate in the discussion, if any.
I'm having technical difficulties on my computer with the large number of questions and answer posed, and that's happened to another member of the committee as well. Like I say, if everybody wants to keep typing questions in that only they and me sees, then I'm happy for them to do that. But the Q&A system right now seems to have frozen up, within the Zoom system. I'm just going to, if I may ask for a 5-minute adjournment, it might give everybody a chance to stretch their legs as well, Mr. Chair.
Yes, certainly. Why don't we take a 5-minute adjournment and we will return then.
Thank you. Can we have the holding slide, please? I think the system's melting down.
چیز شده. Everything is frozen.
Mr. Chair, this is Trish. Can you just check your messages, please?
Okay, coming back. Sorry about this, Mr. Chair. Do you hear me, Mr. Chair? Yeah, you're muted.
I hear you.
Okay. Mr. Jellier, can you hear me okay? Mr.
Yes, sir.
Chemtub, can you hear me fine? Just give me a thumbs up if you can. Ms. Gassemi, are you there? We're just recouping everybody. Not sure what happened, but this is, of course, the joys of doing things on a live basis. Okay, terrific, terrific. Again, I'm just going to point out to all attendees, and we have 735 people apparently still online, Mr. Chair, that I'm not sure where the problem happened, but I certainly have corrected it now. I think we're ready to proceed. We were just at agenda item number 6. We had concluded the Q&A. You are now proceeding to asking, and I think we need to redo the motions and the seconding of the motion to accept the treasurer's report, Mr. Chair. And I think that's where we're resuming from.
Certainly. All right, so I would like to have a motion to accept the treasurer's report. Is there a mover, Mr. Mongeon?
Yes, there is. Majid Moghadam has in fact moved.
And is there a seconder?
There is. Mehdi Rogani has seconded the motion.
A motion has been made that the treasurer's report be accepted. This motion has been seconded. This motion is now open to discussion. Mr. Mongeon, please advise those present how they may participate in the discussion, if any.
Through the question and answer box, there are already a number of people that are adding questions. And so with your permission, Mr. Chair, I will go until 2:10 with respect to any questions and comments.
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you. I have, I have Harmeet Tour asking, I encourage everyone to vote yes to accepting the financial report. There are individuals who are trying to derail the AGM with bad comments and accusations on this Q&A. I have Reza Jahanban, who is commenting on the financial report as follows. Because the board did not provide the financial reports for the last few years as per bylaws, not until the court ordered them to do so, I suggest we reject the report. Mohammed Reza Hagjazi has said the financial report should be rejected as it is not accurate. Amanda McDonald has commented, I urge everyone to please vote yes to accepting this motion. The report has solid financial numbers and the numbers don't lie. There is no reason why this should not be accepted. Maida Samadian has stated, thank you for the treasurer report and for keeping the organization afloat during an aggressive lawsuit. I will be supporting the treasurer's report and encourage people to vote yes. Sadie Kadir has stated many times in her presentation, it was mentioned that we could not talk freely about the lawsuit. I would like to question the applicants in the lawsuit who imposed an unprecedented financial burden on volunteers-based grassroots organization. Couldn't they have asked for a list of the members in a special AGM? What was their, sorry, this is non-responsive to the questions on the financial report, and so I'm going to dismiss it. What is the question? What is the consequence when the previous board's reports get rejected or accepted? Do you want to have an answer to that question, Ms. Gassemi? You are muted, so.
I would like to pass on that question to the chair of the meeting. I believe Marvin has the answer to that question. If the report is not.
Well, the consequence to not accepting this report would be a matter for the next board to be elected to deal with. And as well, the members could choose to deal with it in any way they have available to them as a matter of law, good corporate practice and procedure as well. It has no consequence to this meeting per se, other than the vote result will either carry the motion or the vote will defeat it. And that's the consequence for here, but it is a matter to be taken up by the next board and or by the members of ICC moving forward.
Thank you. I have the next question from Susan Bayani, that why is the treasurer excluded from responding to inquiries?
Unfortunately, he's not available on an urgent matter today. So he planned to be on the call. Having said that, unfortunately, he's not.
Amir Kadir offers the comment that with due respect, we will have to reject this report for its numerous shortcomings. Mohammad Reza Hajjagazi has in fact questioned, Ms. Gassemi claims that the previous president and treasurer are faulty of the organization losing its credit card with TD. What is the merit behind not changing the bank account to another organization where a secured credit card could be obtained?
As of today, we're not able to move on to any other financial institution and ask for as a brand new clients of that organization. We're not able to proceed with that. And unfortunately, I mentioned that in the information session. That is correct. As a result of faulty actions of the previous board members, ICC have lost the access to the credit card back in 2016 to 17.
So the next question is, who will pay if the current board of directors decides to start a legal action?
Sorry, you need to clarify that question. Who wants to start another legal action?
Well, I'll keep moving. Comment from Hussein Amushahi. This financial report is a joke and should definitely be rejected. Yunus Eliyari has commented, reject the report. Hussein Rahman has commented, I appreciate Ms. Gassemi for such a report. May I do 3 more comments or questions, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
The next comment comes from Hamid Chirdistian. I encourage everyone to accept the report. Well done, board. It's a shame to see this huge negative sentiment from some biased persons. A comment from Muslim Nouri. I strongly support the report. Elmira Mali comments, I reject the report. I'm now concluding the comments and questions. There are many open, about 30 or 40 open comments and questions in the Q&A session we don't have time for. I turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Manjon, and thank you, Ms. Gassemi. It has been moved and seconded that the treasurer's report be accepted. You will now see a poll pop up on your screen. Those in favor of the motion, please click yes on the poll pop-up. Those opposed to the motion, please click no on the poll pop-up. Please vote on the motion now. Mr. Manjon, how long do the members have to vote on this motion?
They will have 60 seconds, Mr. Chair, to vote on this motion, and they can indicate by either clicking on yes or no if they accept the treasurer's report. Mr. Chair, just in passing, I also notice that I'm now confirming that the election concluded at 2 o'clock, and I will be able to tabulate the results prior to my presentation on this issue following the audited financial statements and the appointment of the auditor.
Thank you, Mr. Marjan.
We now have concluded the polling. I have the results available for you on the motion to accept the treasurer's report, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Marjan, what is the result of the vote on this motion?
The result on this motion is, and may I show those results on the screen?
Yes, please.
The results on the motion are that 325 people have voted to accept the treasurer's report. 356 people have voted no to accept it. Therefore, the motion is defeated. By the way, because people have asked that in the past, I note at present there are 765 attendees online. So there are some people who were not able to, in fact, vote on this poll.
Okay, thank you. The motion is defeated. The treasurer's report is not accepted. I turn now to agenda item number 7, audited financial statements of the ICC for 2018 and 2019, and the auditor's report dated November 5, 2020. A link to the audited financial statements of the ICC for 2018 and 2019 and the auditor's report dated November 5, 2020 was sent to ICC members and posted on the ICC website on November 18, 2020. We'll now hear auditor's report dated November 5, 2020, and I call upon David Chemtov, a chartered professional accountant and auditor, to present his auditor's report and the audited financial statements of the ICC for 2018 and 2019. Mr. Chemtov. You're on mute, sir.
So I'm going to go over the balance sheet. The auditor report is self-explanatory. There's nothing in it that needs specific mention. So I'm going to go to the balance sheet. So we have cash, 270 compared to 1,552 for 2018. Furniture and equipment, if you go to note 3, we have cost $500, accumulated depreciation 180, so we have 320 for 2019, and it was 400 for 2018. Accounts payable represents the legal and audit fees that were due as of December 31st, 2019. There was advances made by board members of 22,812. 2018 was 500. And we had a deficit of 35,047 in 2019 compared to a net asset of 1,452. If we go to the income statement, in 2018, there was more activity involved. Basically, you had events and sponsorship of 47,666. Donation was 16,508 compared to 18,602 in 2019. And grant of 2,795. That grant was really for the purpose of having salary and wages paid to somebody that came in. So we have it down as 2,795. For the expenses, you have advertising a promotion. 2019 was 4,320 compared to 2,575. Rent was 4,451 compared to 10,071. The reason was that the rent got reduced because the ICC decided not to have offices rent. event 50,000 in 2018, and this was related to the event and sponsorship of 47,000 on top. Interest $48 compared to 136. Depreciation 80,000 compared to 100. Office and general 3,424 compared to 4,557. The salary we mentioned before. Meetings 1,873. Professional fees 42,778. That's due to the lawsuits, and 904 in 2018. So basically we have a deficit of 36,499 compared to a deficit of 6,991. So the bottom line, the deficit at the end of the year is 35,047 compared to a positive of 1,452. If you go to the cash flow statement, last year was 2018 was 6,991 deficit compared to 36,499. Depreciation doesn't affect the cash flow, so it's added back. Now the change in working capital we have here. Prepaid expense 5,708 in 2018. And accounts payable, we have 12,825 contribution in 2019. Board member made advances to ICC of 22,312. So the decrease in cash flow was 1,282. Cash beginning of the year 1,552, and then we end up with a balance in the bank of 270. There's nothing special in the note, except for the going concern. There is a fear that the organization cannot keep going as a going concern because of the tremendous expenses it has to incur to defend itself. But I was assured by the board members that they're going to be able to raise enough money to continue as a going concern. Basically, that's the whole financial statement. If there is any question.
Mr. Shemtov, do you have any comments on your auditor's report other than that you've made?
Not really. I mean, there's nothing really to add to unless there is questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shemtov. Are there any questions or comments to be noted? Mr. Mongeon, please advise.
Mr. Chair, I will be answering or posing any questions at the moment, just while we do some other work in the background. Is that acceptable?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, let me just go back. I need to check my times. So let me start with this one. Did the auditor have direct access to sources of information for these reports, or is it based on information provided by ICC board only?
No, I had access to the bank statement. I had access to confirmation from different sources. So it's not only what they supplied me.
Okay. There's a question from Nima Mashouf. If I could ask that because it is in Persian, if it be translated?
Sure. My apology, I didn't get a chance to type it for you, so I'll read it in Farsi first and then in English.
Please.
Mr. Chantop, bear with me. I'll read it
no
first in
problem.
Farsi.
Yeah.
The question is از طرف خانم مشعوف الان بیش از 3000 نفر عضو کنگره هستیم و هر کدام $10 حق عضویت پرداخت کردیم. این $30,000 رو در گزارش مالی ندیدم. کجا گزارش شده؟ We are currently more than 3,000 members strong in the Congress, and everybody has paid a $10 membership fee. I haven't seen this $30,000 in the financial report. Where is it reported?
Well, the 3,500 might refer to 2020. It doesn't refer to the 2019. The 2019, according to the financial statement, is only 18,602. So basically, the 2019 could be 1,860 members or less, because there might be some donations.
There's a comment from Kamyar Shadi. Thank you for an excellent report. There's a question from Muslim Nouri. How much does the compensation from the applicants of the second lawsuit change the financial balance?
Well, I don't have access to the new lawsuit. All I know is that the fees that are recorded in the 2019 financial were reduced to 42,778 according to the agreement that was made with the lawyers. But for the current lawsuit or court costs, I have no clue how much it is now.
Okay, and can I have from, one second please, from Abdulreza Namdari, thank you for the report. Can I, okay, so same comment from Sahar Nikpour. Okay. Ali Sartipi, in 2018, expenses reported for events was 50,947. This is too high. It says that in 2019, based on Ms. Gassemi's report, they reduced the legal fees, but still reporting 42,777 as legal expenses. Why is the reduction not affected?
Well, the reduction, the 42,000 should have been much higher by about 10,000. So it should have been 52,778. But since the lawyer agreed to reduce the fees, and we reduce the amount on the P&L.
Okay, there's a question here that it says from Farah Karimi, what are the findings of the auditor? It's just a very general question.
Well, this is a straightforward report, except there is a qualified opinion on the revenue, because it's very hard to audit revenue, because some revenue come as cash, some revenue come from different sources that cannot be audited. So that's why I just only have a qualified opinion on the revenue. But the rest is a clean report.
From Tayaz Fakhri, did you see any discrepancy with the financial statements provided by the board?
No. The only adjustment was made for the legal fees. I reduced the legal fee because I had assurance from the lawyers that they're gonna reduce the fees.
Okay, and from Javed Asadi, did auditor encounter any irregularities?
No.
Okay, one second. There's a question here, for what event was 51,000K, for what event 51,000K was spent?
The biggest expenses for that 52,000, I'm just gonna check for my notes. Was paid to Chateau Le Parc. They paid about 24,000 to host the event. The rest were miscellaneous items, like florist, 3,164. Catering, 5,708. Sound system, 1,500. Videography, $500. There was the cancellation fee of 5,500 Max Amini. So this basically, that's the major item was for Le Chateau Le Parc of 25,000.
Okay, I have Siavash Jalili. These reports are supposed to be 2 financial years reports, one as of the end of 2018 and one as of the end of 2019. Why is there no specific going concern for end of 2019, state of the organization?
Well, as a not referred to 2019, there was no problem with the 2018 because the deficit was very small. So the note really referred to the 2019. And since the report is comparative, there was no need to make 2 separate financial statements.
Thank you. Reza Hushmand, what are the third parties' confirmation for the legal expenses?
Well, I get confirmation from the lawyer directly, so.
Okay. All right, 1 second. Sorry, it's just slow for me to scroll down. So there is a question from Bardia Jalali. Was there an approval by the general membership to run a deficit?
This, you have to check with the bylaw of the organization. But you have to realize the organization was faced with a lawsuit that they had to act on it.
Okay. I have a comment from, or a question from Mohammed Reza Haji Ghazi. Thank you for your report. What is the exact breakdown of the $42,788 in professional fees?
I don't have a breakdown, but this is basically the lawyer fees for defending the organization.
Thank you. Sorry, it's just, again, a little difficult for me to get this down. There's a question from Afshin Jam. What were the number of members in 2019?
I don't have that answer.
Okay. From Miran Aminian, How did the auditor make sure that the reported membership fee is accurate?
I checked all the bank statement and deposit to come to that figures of the 18,602 and the 16,508 in the previous year.
Okay, and I have a question from Jahangir Syed. What is the details of the professional fees in 2019 as it significantly increased?
$1,500 was for auditing fees, and the rest was for the lawyers.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, given the time, may I ask 2 more questions?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay. Okay, we have a question of who has chosen the financial auditor?
I cannot answer that. I mean, you have to ask the board member. How come that shows me?
Okay. And from Behzad Mirabadi, why is the source of some revenues not clear?
Some of the revenue might have been coming as cash donation or cash, and it's very hard to audit cash. That's why there is a qualification in the auditor report about revenue.
Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Bonjean, and thank you, Mr. Chemtov. May I have a motion to accept the audited financial statements of the ICC for 2018 and 2019 and the auditor's report dated November 5, 2020? Is there a mover?
I have a mover, Mr. Chair. Ruhollah Mafi wishes to move the motion.
Is there a seconder, Mr. Bonjean?
I have Farhad Sadeghi who wishes to second the motion.
A motion has been made that the audited financial statements of the ICC for 2018 and 2019 and the auditor's report dated November 5, 2020 be accepted. This motion has been seconded. This motion is now open to discussion. Mr. Mongeron, please advise those present how they may participate in the discussion, if any.
As always, any questions or comments on the motion can be inserted using the Q&A function. There is some confusion with some of the people who have proposed comments and questions because they say they do not see the pop-up. There would not be a pop-up yet until we call the question. I have a question. I have a question from Meni Mobini. Why did the board accept cash as a donation since cash cannot be traced by the auditor? Mr. Auditor, Mr. Chemtov?
Yes?
Can you respond to the question?
Well, I cannot respond why the organization
Why the
accepted
board,
cash.
yes.
Because I mean, no, any organization would accept any money that they get as a donation. So it's a question.
I have a comment from Harmeet Tour. This report was very clear, and I encourage everyone to vote for this report, not listen to the few disruptive members. From Reza Jahanban, as there is a lot of cash from unknown sources, I ask this motion to be rejected. Amir Sharif, many thanks to the board member of the ICC. I believe that we should accept it. Suda Niramad is in favor of the motion. Mariam Eskandari, the responses from the auditor are not convincing. It appears he is not certain about his answers. Why should we accept it? Behzad Mirabadi, since the source of some revenues are not known and it was done with cash with no way to trace it, I propose to reject this audit. Morteza Abdullalian. There are many discrepancies and therefore this is not acceptable. Susan Bayani. Have you done any work for any of the board members privately or their companies? So Mr. Chemtob, I'm going to direct that to you. Have you done any work for any of the board members?
None at all.
Thank you. Muslim Nouri is commenting, thank you, David, for being patient with the questions. Tayaz Fakhri, I'm voting for it, but it is a disgrace for those who raise so much suspicion. And now we hear from the auditor that the financial statements were all correct. Neda Red, for the auditor, how do we, well, I'm going to pass on this. It's about cash again, and that deals more with management than it does with audit. Hushang Kam, no, again, it's, if it has to do with cash, I'm just going to pass on these comments and questions. Ahmad Moazami is commenting, please do not listen to those trying to hurt the AGM. Vote yes. Hossein Rahman, what's the meaning of rejecting a financial report from a legal auditor who is neutral? Mr. Chair, do you want to field that one?
It's up to the assembly and those in attendance at the AGM to vote yes or no to the motion which is on the table.
Mr. Chair, given the time and the amount of time we've allotted, including the technical delay, may I read 3 more comments or questions?
Yes, please.
Mohsen Fardahlu. So if there is no discrepancy between the auditor report and the president's report, what is the basis to ask auditors? The question doesn't make sense. Mani Mobini, why didn't the board make it? Well, again, that deals with the board. It should have been asked for the board. Ruhola Mafi, what is the percentage of cash donations to the total? Mr. Chemtob, do you have that, the answer to that question? You don't have that answer. And one last question, Mehdi Dures Zadeh, the auditor has said, I haven't seen the number of members in the year that you have audited. How can you be sure if the membership fee amount, therefore, is correct if some of them have paid in cash?
Basically, the audit I conducted was based on the bank statement and the receipt, deposit receipt that I was able to examine.
Thank you, Mr. Chemtov. Mr. Chair, those are the questions and comments that we have had sufficient time for.
Thank you, Mr. Mongeon, and thank you, Mr. Chemtov. It has been moved and seconded that the audited financial statements of the ICC for 2018 and 2019 and the auditor's report dated November 5, 2020 be accepted. You will now see a poll pop up on your screen. Those in favor of the motion, please click yes on the poll pop-up. Those opposed to the motion, please click no on the poll pop-up. Please vote on the motion now. Mr. Mongeon, how long do the members have to vote on this motion?
They'll have 60 seconds to vote on the motion as presented on the screen to accept the financial statements and the auditor's report thereon. There are 45 seconds left, and most people should be having a pop-up provided they're using the Zoom application or the Zoom program. I also note that at present there are 790 attendees. Fifteen seconds left, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
And that concludes, Mr. Chair, the polling on the acceptance of the financial statements and the auditor's report thereon. I notice of the 792 attendees, 726 people have voted on this poll?
Thank you, Mr. Marjan. What is the result of the vote on this motion?
The result on this motion, which I am showing on the screen, is 362 people have voted to accept the report and 364 people have voted to reject the report. The motion is defeated.
Thank you, Mr. Marjan. The motion is defeated. The audited financial statements of the ICC for the 2018 and 2019 and the auditor's report dated November 5, 2020 are not accepted. I turn now to agenda item number 8, the appointment of the auditor for 2020. May I have a motion to appoint David Chemtov, a chartered professional accountant and auditor, as the auditor for the Iranian Canadian Congress to hold office until the ICC 2020 annual general meeting, and that the auditor's remuneration be fixed at $1,800, excluding HST. Is there a mover? Mr. Marjan.
Just a moment, please. I have Ruhollah Mafi moving the question.
Is there a seconder, Mr. Marjan?
There is. I have Kamir Shadi, who is seconding the question.
A motion has been made to appoint David Chemtov, a chartered professional accountant and auditor, as the auditor for the Iranian Canadian Congress to hold office until the ICC 2020 annual general meeting, and that the auditor's remuneration be fixed at $1,800, excluding HST. This motion has been seconded. This motion is now open to discussion. Mr. Marjan, please advise those present how they may participate in the discussion, if any.
As we have done previously, if someone wishes to type a question on the motion of the appointment of Mr. Chemtov as the auditor going forward, I invite them to type it in. I have a question in Farsi, so I'm going to pass over that one to allow Mr. a chance to get to it. And I'm going to, in fact, read the next one well, it's a comment. It's not a question or comment on the motion. The new board should decide on the new auditor is one of the comments. The next comment from Harmeet Tour is, this is a very good price for an auditor. I invite everybody to vote yes. Afshin Jam asks the question, what does the auditor do differently for the coming year? Can I address that? I don't know. Is that to be addressed to Mr. Chemtov?
Yes, please. Mr. Chemtov, could you respond?
It would depend on what the balance sheet shows and what the P&L shows. Then I will conduct my audit accordingly.
Thank you. And the next question says, this would be to you, Mr. Chair. What are the options should the vote result in a new auditor being chosen? Probably it makes better sense if we say not being chosen.
The procedure will be is if this motion is defeated, there not being any members' motions being entertained today or being considered, as I've previously determined, pursuant to the Corporations Act, Mr. Chemtov will continue as the auditor for the coming year by matter of operation of law, the Corporations Act, until the next annual general meeting of the ICC.
Mr. Chair, may I ask 3 more questions?
Yes, please.
I have one in Farsi. Mr. Jalier is going to do the honors in Farsi and the English translation, please, although it is a matter we've already dealt with. Mr. Jalier, you're on mute.
Sorry, couldn't unmute it. scrolled down, but I believe that was a question from Ms. Mashouf. Question in Farsi is آیا آدیتور برای هیچ کدوم از اعضای هیئت مدیره کنونی کار کردن یا سابقه کار داشتن؟ I'll translate in English. Question to Mr. Chamtab is whether you have had any experience working for any of the current board members in the past.
No, I haven't worked at all for any of the members.
I have the following two additional comments, one from K.N. Razavi. I agree with this auditor, and although formed in a question, it's really a comment because I know the auditor, neither the auditor nor the chair can deal with this. Shouldn't the new board choose the auditor? Mr. Chair, we have concluded the questions and comments on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mongeon, and thank you, Mr. Chemtov. It has been moved and seconded that David Chemtov, a chartered professional accountant and auditor, be appointed as the auditor for the Iranian Canadian Congress to hold office until the ICC 2020 annual general meeting, and that the auditor's remuneration be fixed at $1,800 excluding HST. You will now see a poll pop up on your screen. Those in favor of the motion, please click yes on the poll pop-up. Those opposed to the motion, please click no on the poll pop-up. Please vote on the motion now. Mr. Mongeon, how long do the members have to vote on this motion?
They will have 60 seconds as the previous motions, Mr. Chair. We have 45 seconds left. I note that after this, the last one is my own presentation with the results of the election for the new board of directors.
Thank you.
We have 30 seconds left for people to vote. I know that presently there are 814 attendees in the meeting. And there are 10 seconds left, Mr. Chair, for people to exercise their rights to vote on the polling question that is in front of them on the motion. It's now finished. I'm ending the polling and have a result.
Thank you, Mr. Mongeon. What is the result of the vote on this motion?
733 people have voted on the motion. 733 people have voted, 413 have voted yes in favor, and 320 people have voted against. The reappointment of Mr. Chemtov as auditor is in fact carried.
Thank you. The motion is carried. David Chemtov, a chartered professional accountant and auditor, is appointed as the auditor for the Iranian Canadian Congress to hold office until the ICC 2020 annual general meeting, and that the auditor's remuneration is fixed at $1,800 excluding HST. I turn now to agenda item number 9, members' motions. On December 1st, 2020, I issued my determination regarding members' motions at the ICC 2019 AGM. A link to the notice of this determination was sent to ICC members and posted on the ICC website on December 1, 2020. I carefully reviewed the members' motions received and accepted for consideration by the 2019 AGM committee in consultation with the 2019 AGM committee and the court-appointed technical expert, and determined that none of these members' motions would be considered at the 2019 AGM for several reasons set out in the notice determination, including that ICC members do not have the legal right to have these members' motions considered at the 2019 AGM under the Ontario Corporations Act and the governing law. This situation may change if and when Ontario's Not-for-Profit Corporations Act is enacted. It is not yet in force. I also stated that I would speak to the matter of members' motions at the 2019 AGM. Since my court appointment as the monitor on September 9, 2019, and having carefully considered the members' motions presented for consideration at this meeting, it has become clear to me that the Iranian Canadian Congress is an important not-for-profit organization, a corporation without share capital with praiseworthy objectives set out in its bylaws. To achieve these objectives in an effective manner, ongoing efforts among ICC members, directors, and officers must be made to analyze and apply the ICC's vision, mission, and values as the base on which it is built to serve its purposes, and to clarify and understand the rights, roles, functions, powers, and authority, as well as the limitations of the ICC Board of Directors and individual directors, officers, and members within the governing structure under which the ICC operates. There are many directors, officers, and members of the ICC who are passionate about and committed to the mission of the organization, who can contribute time, resources, and talents necessary to be a valuable asset of the ICC, who have good ideas about the approach and tone of the organization's fundraising efforts, and who can place the ICC's purposes and interests above their own professional and personal interests when making or proposing appropriate actions to be taken and/or policies or campaigns to be considered or decided by the ICC Board of Directors. I encourage each and every one of you to engage in a new dialogue with each other, listen to others, share context, address differences of opinion, address roadblocks, recognize contributions of others, and show appreciation. And last but not least, evaluate your own motivations and interests, all in a collaborative pursuit of what is in the best interests of the Iranian Canadian Congress. I turn now to agenda item number 10, the election to the ICC Board of Directors. And I now call upon Mr. Mongeon, the technical expert, to address this agenda item. Mr. Mongeon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. You should be able to see on your screen my share screen of my election report. My responsibilities for the operation of this election were simple. I had to make sure that anybody presenting themselves to vote in the election for directors and to participate in this meeting was in fact a member of the, was a member of the Iranian Canadian Congress. In consultation with the ICC Election Committee and under directions from yourself as the court-appointed monitor, we set a meeting registration process. We required members to have acquired their membership by a particular deadline, November the 20th. And then we required members to, in fact, proceed to register that they wanted to participate, to vote, and to participate in this meeting. I then had hands-on responsibility for managing that entire process. There were some problems. The ICC database was recognized by all parties to have a couple of challenges. One of the challenges is that Nation Builder allows people to sign, multiple people in the same family, to sign up under one email address. The notion of voting and participation should have one email per person, and we worked through literally with hundreds of people that problem. Similarly, the ICC policies allowed people to be considered as members even though they may not have signed up as a member. Rather, anybody who had given or donated $10 or more was also to be considered as a member. So on the initial membership list, I took my directions from you that we ultimately were able to recognize people that had donated $10 or more during the last year as members of the ICC. In spite of sending literally tens of thousands of emails with respect to deadlines and having clear notices on the ICC website, people continued to make payments for their membership after the cutoff date, expecting to be allowed to vote in this election. And I unfortunately had to deny them that opportunity. Finally, I can't tell you how many people with Gmail and Yahoo accounts I had to explain that I'm not the one who's putting the emails into their spam and updates and promotions folders. In fact, Gmail is notorious for continuing to create new folders which users don't know how to maneuver. A major decision that you made on my recommendation is that the election for directors did not allow for proxy voting. We discussed at length with the ICC Elections Committee as well, this notion of proxy voting. And because the election was going to be open for a 1-week period of time, we decided that proxies did not make sense. Rather, we would expect each individual who was a member who registered to vote to exercise their vote on their own. All of these issues were in fact on your direction. And with respect to that, how we did, we had a total of 3,300 people apply for membership verification. We asked them the 4 questions on the screen to make sure that in fact there were no problems with the vote. We had a couple of particular concerns at the outset to make sure that the election was as fair as possible. We wanted to make sure that people could not harvest ballots, that they could not have fictitious people or the names of people who may qualify as members but weren't really interested in the objectives. Of the 3,300 people that in fact applied for membership, I rejected 250 of those applications for three problems generally. The first problem was it was a duplicate entry. Someone had in fact probably inadvertently sought to register 2 or more emails for themselves. Another problem that we had is the ICC bylaws are quite clear. To be a regular member, one must be a resident of Canada. And we went to some significant lengths to discuss with some people who were not residents of Canada, and that we in fact had to deny them the ability to vote. And then finally, one of the problems was we had about 40 or 50 people who had applied to register to vote. And in fact, I had sent numerous reminder emails to, and they failed to respond to them, maybe because of the Gmail spam problem. With a limited number of people who had sought registration, I conducted further audits and verifications, which might include a Zoom call to verify someone's identity, to have a proof of residence, and to establish their good faith in the concept. We also conducted audits with the assistance of the ICC Elections Committee and under your direction of groups of different IP addresses. We were particularly concerned with IP addresses which originated outside of Canada. Those fell into two major groups. One major group, and I apologize to people who might be on the call who had me dunning them, why did you use an IP address that wasn't in Canada, only to find out that they were using their employer's VPN in the United States. And similarly, we had a number of them which resulted in people realizing that maybe they weren't resident Canadians and shouldn't be a member. The election itself started at 12:01 Eastern time on December the 6th. That was a week ago. It was concluded just an hour ago at 2 p.m. Eastern. 3,033 ballots were sent out. Of those, 2,729 ballots were submitted for a total return rate of 93%. Mr. Chair, this goes to all of the points that you were just recently making about the interest and passion that members of the ICC have for their group. I've never seen such a great return rate. After the start of the election last Saturday, I did issue an additional 75 ballots. These were for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons was some voters, in fact, communicated with me by email to say that they had either made a mistake or they had changed their mind, or for some reason they believed that their original ballot should be spoiled and resent. I was happy on appropriate confirmations to, in fact, deal with those requests. In addition, with a group of people, I was able to confirm that they had had a good faith intention to register before the deadlines because of various technical glitches, the major one being that two people trying to share one email means they only would get one ballot, that in fact we were able to have people who could satisfy me about those. There were also about 100 requests that I had after the beginning of the election for people who thought that I should register them. The principal reason why these people were not registered to vote is that in fact they hadn't completed the election process. And our rationale, and you and I had discussed this many times, our rationale for denying them access is, look, 3,000 people could figure out the system. We're not going to make an exception for individuals. I personally sent or received over 2,600 emails over the course of the last month. That doesn't include the thousands of emails that came from Election Buddy and Zoom. By the way, I'm showing on the screen, there's a particular link to a website that I'm going to ask be pushed out in the, I'm just trying to copy it right now so that I can push it out to everybody on the chat. For those, in fact, who are concerned that their particular ballot may or may not have counted, all of the ballots generated a confirmation number. You can find that confirmation number and the IP address that you used to vote at the link that I've just, sorry, I've realized it just went to all panelists as opposed to all attendees. And so anyone can access this, use their verification number, and make sure that their ballot counted. Now to the results of the election. I'm going to present it in two different screens. The first screen is by alphabetical order. And on the screen, I note that those who have been elected, the 9 directors, will be marked with an asterisk. So here are the results of the election. Those with an asterisk, you'll notice that there are 9 of them, have in fact been elected. And I'm just counting again. Hopefully I got it right to make sure there are 9 of them. And those are the people that have been elected with the number of votes that they had that's marked next to their name. I'm now going to present the next screen, if I may, Mr. Chair. May I?
Yes, please.
And this is on the left are the 9 directors who have been elected. And on the right are the 10 candidates for whom we thank them for their candidacy, but unfortunately they have not been elected. And I'm just going to leave that up on the screen so people can understand who the 9 members of the board will be. And I have actually had some time, to conduct some minor analyses on that. One of the things, of course, that I've been concerned about throughout is verifiability and the transparency and the security of the election procedure. I have had no concerns about the election procedure at all. I know that some people may, in fact, say that technology has been an impediment, and I cannot dispute that those who are not used to technology, who now have to use it, are going to experience an election like this a lot differently. But I'm just going to advance now. One of the ways that I looked at the election results is each voter could vote for up to 9 candidates. There were 2,796 ballots submitted. That meant that, in fact, on average, every ballot voted for 8.54 candidates. This indicates that there were very few people who did not exercise all of their 9 permitted votes on a ballot. That's actually a possible signal used by those who try to understand elections to see whether or not there are any challenges. In this case, it seems, with that number being so close to 9, that there was a clear effort on the part of those voting to vote a slate of 8 or 9 people. I also noticed that in the overall results, there were only 3 people who in fact abstained. These 2 results taken together show me that yes, for those who are not used to the online system, it may have been a challenge and something new that they could learn. But I also took from this that people were able to figure it out, and there weren't a significant number of voters, for example, who may only have accidentally pressed the submit button with only 1 box being attached. My congratulations to the following 9 candidates who have been elected to the ICC Board of Directors. That is my official report, Mr. Chair, to this meeting. And I thank you for the opportunity to be part of this process.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mongeon, and congratulations to those who were elected. I turn now to agenda item number 11, meeting adjournment. I move that the ICC 2019 Annual General Meeting be adjourned, and I thank you all for joining us today. I wish the ICC much success in the coming year. This meeting stands adjourned.
I will conclude the meeting, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mongeon.